Hello and welcome to the Arise interview, 60 glorious minutes of multifaceted discussion where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and we feature the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Aniagulu. Coming up in the next hour, if there is one political event in recent Nigerian history that will be engraved in the minds of many people for a lifetime, it is the election of Muhammadu Buhari as president in 2015. For the first time ever, an opposition party had democratically wrested control of the country from an incumbent president. Gone was the PDP party of Goodluck Jonathan, which bestrode the country for 16 years. In its place, a new coalition of opposition political parties, known collectively as the APC, took charge of Africa's most populous nation under the chairmanship of John Odigie Oyegun. This week, Chief Oyegun is marking his 80th birthday, and he'll be live in the studio in a moment. Now, the name John Odigie Oyegun is easily identifiable as one who has played a hugely important role in the political evolution of Nigeria, particularly in recent times. Any autobiography about him would almost certainly have political history as its linchpin, in particular the history of the ruling All Progressives Congress Party, or APC, before, during and after it was formed, and the early heady days after the 2015 presidential election, when the APC, under his chairmanship, wrested control of government from the PDP, the first ever electoral defeat of an incumbent government in 2015. That single event invited impossible expectations amongst the populace, expectations that are yet to be fulfilled, and a new politics of change that's yet to emerge. But it also created impossible expectations within the APC party itself, which Chief Oyegun had to manage until, ravaged by internecine peer conflict, he could do so no more. Well, in a moment, we'll hear about the life and journey of the political giant, Chief John Odigie Oyegun, who, in addition to being the former chairman of the APC, was also a former governor of Edo State. But before we speak to him, let's take a look back at the developments occurring in Nigeria yesterday, when President Buhari and his APC party announced a new group of ministers who were to take Nigeria into what they say will be a brighter future.
The ministers are therefore allocated portfolios as follows. Number 1, Dr. Okechukwu Oga, Minister of State Mines and Steel Development. Muhammadu Bello, Minister of Federal Capital Territory. Senator Goodwill Afabio, Minister of Niger Delta. Dr. Chris Ingege, Minister of Labor and Employment. Sharon O. Akezo, Minister of State Environment. Malam Adamu, Minister of Education. Ambassador Miriam Y. Katagum, Minister of State Industry, Trade and Investment. Timothy Silva, Minister of State Petroleum under Mr. President. Senator John Ikume, Minister of Social Duties and International Affairs. Mustafa Baba Shahuri, Minister of State Agriculture and Rural Development. Gode Jide Abba, Minister of State Power. Festus Kiamu San, Minister of State Niger Delta. Dr. Ogonia Onu, Minister of Science and Technology. Dr. Osagi Iha Nere, Minister of Health. Clement Aike Anade Agba, Minister of State Budget and National Planning. Otumba Richard Adenei Adebayo, Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. Geoffrey Onyema, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Dr. Ali Isa Ibrahim Pantami, Minister of Communication. Emeka Iwajuba, Minister of State Education. Engineer Suleiman H. Adam, Minister of Water Resources. Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed, Minister of Finance. Dr. Mohammed Mahmoud, Minister of Environment. Sabo Nanono, Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. Major General retired Bashir Salihi Magashi, Minister of Defense. Then Minister of Petroleum. Next, Senator Hadi Sirika, Minister of Aviation. Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Justice. Ramatu Tijani, Minister of State, Federal Capital Territory. Lai Mohammed, Minister of Information and Culture. Bemisola Saraki, Minister of State Transportation. Babatunde Raji Pashola, Minister of Works and Housing. Senator Adeleke O. Mamora, Minister of State Health. Mohammed H. Abdullahi, Minister of State Science and Technology. Ambassador Zubairu Dada, Minister of State Foreign Affairs. Architect Olani Lekan, a Deputy, Minister of Mines and Steel Development. Senator Tayo D. Alaso Dura, Minister of State Labor and Employment. Rup Aruba Shola, Minister of Interior. Sanjay Dari, Minister of Youth and Sports. Pauline Talent, Minister of Women Affairs. Aratami Abechi, Minister of Transportation. Muhammadu Megari Gingadi, Minister of Police Affairs. Engineer Saleh Mamman, Minister of Power. Abubakar D. Aliyu, Minister of State Works and Housing. Saadia Umar Farooq, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. On this note, I wish to formally inaugurate the new members of the Federal Executive Council. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
And that is, of course, President Buhari from yesterday, announcing his new cabinet, which he says will take Nigeria into a brighter future. Well, one man who presided over Mr. Buhari coming into power in the first place, Chief John Odigie Oyegun, will be with us in a moment. We'll hear about the life and journey of this political giant who, in addition to being the former chairman of the APC, was also a former governor of Edo State. But first, here he is speaking in 2015, soon after he led his APC party to an historic victory at the polls.
It is in order, therefore, for us to congratulate ourselves for the singular victory that we achieved through the combined efforts of all the stakeholders of the party, from ward level right up to the national level. Our congratulations should go most especially to you, Mr. President, for being the rallying point around whom we were able to focus our message of change. We became easily believable because you carried that unusual charisma of incorruptibility and concern for the welfare of the downtrodden. These you exemplified by the courage of your repeated attempts to be given the opportunity to chart a new direction for the long-suffering Nigerian masses. Your charisma and near-called followership was clearly the most significant ingredient that facilitated what can be described as a landslide victory.
That's Chief John Odigie Oyegun there in 2015. And delighted to say that Chief Oyegun, the former national chairman of the ruling APC party in Nigeria and former governor of Edo State, joins me now in the studio. Thank you very much indeed.
It's my pleasure.
You look remarkably composed for somebody who had to jog up the steps to get here
My
in
pleasure.
time.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, well, you look very fit. Congratulations, by the way. You're
Thank you.
marking your 80th birthday. We're very honored to have you here.
Thank you.
There isn't there, a sense of just watching that video, a sense of sort of classic paradoxical irony here that is so typical of Nigeria, that the man who you brought in 2015, President Buhari, to lead the country into a more hopeful democratic future, is the same man who trampled on the democratic rights of many Nigerians as a military dictator. Was that something that you forgot when you brought him in?
No. We did not forget that. Your comparison is, well, a little bit hard. But yes.
Well, tell that to the people who were under his jackboot in 1983.
I will not go back into history. What is important is that this man, our president, 3 times tried to present himself to this country for leadership, to be trusted to lead. 3 times, which meant clearly that this was a passionate man.
And yet,
which meant clearly that this was a man who had a message and something he passionately wants to achieve. This was a man who was persistent in his quest. And clearly, at least we interacted with him very closely, a man who regretted the military past interference in the politics of this nation and who had a message he wanted to transmit, and projects and things he wanted to change. He wanted badly to change the course and the direction of this nation. And when you come across a man like that, of course, you grab him with both hands, and that's exactly what the APC did.
Okay, please stay with us. We've got to take a short break now. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the former national chairman of the ruling party in Nigeria, the APC, Chief John Odigie Oyegun, as he marks his 80th birthday. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolo. Perhaps more than any other national chairman of a political party in Nigeria, Chief John Odigie Oyegun has helped to reshape the electoral landscape in this country, defying the odds to lead his APC party to victory in 2015 as its first national chairman and managing to unseat an incumbent government for the first time in the history of Nigeria. Born in Warri in the old Midwest to an Edo father and a Urobo mother, Chief Oyegun rose to prominence first as a civil servant and later as an elected civilian governor during the transition to democracy era launched by General Babangida in 1992. He was part of the team of activists that rebelled against the military and fought for democracy under the umbrella of the pressure group NADECO. He would later become leader of the All Nigeria People's Party, ANPP, and later still the first national chairman of the APC, the party that helped President Buhari to electoral victory in 2015 and again in 2019. Well, in a moment, we'll speak some more to Chief Oyegun. But first, here's the Vice President of Nigeria, Yemi Osinbajo, paying tribute to Chief Oyegun a few days ago as he marked his 80th birthday.
I've always admired Chief John Odigie Oyegun, and I must say for two reasons. The first reason is that somehow he has always been his own man, charting his own course, sometimes making some real trouble. For example, when as a permanent secretary, he risked contempt proceedings when he refused to testify on principle. As a young man, I watched with bated breath, wondering when they were going to carry him to jail. But he ended up on the right side. But almost always, you always find him on the right side of history. As a founding member of the AD, member of NADECO, and later as secretary of those abroad, founding member of the APC, and the first chairman, and one who led our party to that historic victory to unseat the ruling party. But the second reason for my admiration is that somehow he manages to be so deep in Nigeria politics, yes, he doesn't even look like a politician or sound like one. He always sounds like a fine, well-bred, well-spoken gentleman dragged into politics by some rascals. But indeed, he is a consummate politician and an astute strategist. It is this particular attribute of being in politics without being a politician that I would like to be when, as Professor Gambari said, when I grow up. And I think I have more reason to be able to say that I'd like to be like that when I grow up.
And that's the Nigerian Vice President there, Yemi Osinbajo, paying tributes to Chief John Odigie Oyegun. And of course, he was the former national chairman of the APC, and he is with me in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. How do you think historians will view your legacy? Loaded question.
Very loaded question. I have always believed that things can be done better. That our politics does not have to be as adversarial as it is. That it does not have to be as aggressive as it is. And when we embarked on the doctrine of change, for me, this meant change for everybody in the nation, change in our attitudes, change in our respect for law, change in our respect for due process, change in our respect for what is right, and our ability to differentiate it from what is wrong. And I joined the bandwagon. I offered myself for leadership because I wanted to contribute to that process, that our politics can be different, that you do not have to be a thug or carry a sledgehammer around to show how much power you have to be successful. And if I have to be remembered for anything, it is that, yes, I have proved that you can get to the dizzy heights, being what our respected Vice President has just described, a gentleman in all respects, not the typical negative description of the politician.
Well, that's you as an individual. I mean,
Yes.
you're in bed with a lot of people who match this
You see,
description that you've wanted to stay away
The
from.
way I look at it, we are all on a stage. The entire nation is watching. The entire nation sees them get away with it, but almost at all times, not all the time. Eventually, nemesis does catch up.
Yeah, but in the
But the same
meantime,
public are
you would have
watching me.
bashed the country to death by the time
No,
nemesis I mean,
well, countries go through phases.
well, let me take
go
you up
through-
on one thing you said.
Yeah.
One clear example that you gave, you talked about your change mantra, your slogan of change that you bandied around in 2015 and a couple of years after.
Bandied around.
But it is,
That's
it
not
is
very
true.
flattering.
That's, well, it's not meant to be flattering.
well,
I mean, with all
we
due
meant
respect
it.
to you as an individual, we're talking about the broader aspects of Nigerian politics. Is it fair to say that your APC campaign, which you spearheaded as national chairman, and subsequent government, which you managed to put in power, failed to communicate to the people that just saying the word change is not a program, but the promise of a program, and that after you had captured the people's imagination with your change mantra, you then had to translate change into a series of programs that the people would identify with?
That, I must say, is a process that is still very much underway.
Well, that's not the impression you gave in 2015.
No. Hold it. You might have read the signs wrongly. We never told you that we have that magic switch at the corner of the wall. Which
Well, you're saying that in retrospect.
Hold
Okay.
on. Which immediately our president is sworn into office, he flicks it, and hey presto.
Right.
The whole of the country has changed. No, it is a process. And let me admit that the realities on the ground turned out to be a little bit more difficult than we found it to be, than we thought.
So you made
it was.
promises you
Hold
couldn't
on.
keep,
That-
basically.
No, we didn't do that. That the evils that we were trying to fight, corruption, due process, respect for right and wrong and the rest of it, was more deep-seated and deep-rooted than we expected. And that these people were so powerful and so moneyed that they fought back in a way that obviously slowed down our process some of the way.
But what about-
it is a process that is still underway, even as we move into the very next level. We are carrying change with us. It's not something that was dumped with the 2015 election. No. Change we must continue to emphasize and continue to work on until the nation is like the Titanic. We saw the iceberg coming, but turning the boat is not something you just wish. And it
So
happens.
why is it that there does not appear to be a sense of urgency, given the size and the complication of the problems that you met when you came into office? I mean, it is remarkable that in 6 months as president in 2015, apart from general talk about security and corruption, Mr. Buhari did not lay out any clear policy proposals on any of the major national issues that concern Nigerians beyond security, of course, as well as corruption. You also had an ailing educational system, healthcare that was bad, nor for that matter, strategy for dealing with unemployment, and things that Nigerians want immediate action on and want to be tackled head on.
Well, like I told you, and I think it bears repeating, there's nothing like a magic switch. We took over in a situation that was, you remember, the president himself said when he saw the realities on the ground at the beginning, he almost wished he was not there. We took over.
Well, he obviously didn't resign.
We took over a collapsed economy.
Right.
And so all our priorities and the rest of it had to be subsumed to the urgent task of resuscitating an economy that had virtually collapsed.
Yeah, but all
so it changed the priority rating.
But all the analysts say, both international and national, that the reason why Nigeria went into recession was because your government failed to take charge and to come up with solutions to deal with a crisis that was clearly unfolding before their very eyes. I mean, the fact is that politicians always promise more than they deliver. I'm just wondering whether, as chairman of the APC in 2015, you wished you'd promised something, I mean, less ambitious.
In 2015?
Yeah, when you came into office, because you had all these sort of...
promises we made in 2015 did not have a date line attached to it. But that is, I don't want to make any excuses.
Right.
The reality, and that is truth, is that even for us, we did not meet our own expectations. We fell a bit short, but we recognize why and we know
Well,
why.
at least you're being honest, because a lot of people in your party wouldn't even go this far.
No, they will. I mean,
well,
we
had them where
we
you're
all
sitting.
know we didn't score the kind of score that we had expected. But look, let me say one thing. It is so nice and comfortable to sit down and be a critic and to review things and to be all wise and to be all knowing, but faced with the realities of governance. You know, this conversation reminds me that I was once also not in or close to government. And you tend to think, I say, look, what happens to them when they get there?
Okay.
Do they get stupid? Do they get
well, let me ask you to
brainwashed?
hold that thought, because we've got to take another break. But we'll
Okay.
talk about this
Okay,
when we
thank
come
you.
back. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the former national chairman of the ruling party in Nigeria, the APC, Chief John Odigie Oyegun, who's marking his 80th birthday. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Aniegolu. And after the thrill of the APC's electoral victory in 2015 under the chairmanship of my guest today, Chief John Odigie Oyegun, came the agony of internecine squabbles as the cracks began to appear and spread within the ruling APC party. As various factions jostled for power and settled old scores with President Buhari's placement, Chief Oyegun's ability to reconcile the party was tested to the limit. But in spite of his best efforts, the APC hierarchy seemed unable to salve the wounds of aggrieved members across Nigeria, and it looked like the ruling party simply could not be one big happy family again. As the APC's internal problems mounted, so did the external ones, with plans for a new opposition alliance taking shape, and Chief John Oyegun and his APC executives suddenly finding themselves with several fights on their hands as new elections approached. The opposition People's Democratic Party, or PDP, opened talks with 35 of the country's 68 registered parties to forge an alliance to take on the APC. And with communal violence, a shaky economy, and a faltering anti-corruption campaign eroding the government's credibility, the national coalition that had propelled President Buhari to power in 2015 appeared to have lost energy and direction. Well, to speak some more about all that, my guest today is Chief John Oyegun, the former national chairman of the ruling APC party in Nigeria. Thank you for staying with us, sir.
My pleasure, thank you.
You, of course, came in, and after that period of, the thrill of victory and all of that, you've suddenly found yourself in the middle of a crisis within the APC. What happened there?
I don't know if I agree with you one bit, but in terms of your summation and your reading that after victory, hold on,
sure.
After victory we were immediately in the middle of a crisis. No, there was no such thing. The APC was not in the middle of a crisis, and even now is still the best placed party in this nation. Yes, there are issues, but to go back to post-victory, it was clear. One, we were not in government prior. Two, we had major blocs making tremendous sacrifices, political parties now, 3 and a fraction of one other party, coming together to form one single party, totally dumping all their antecedents. 3, we had the powerful group from the PDP, 5 governors joining the APC. So there was obviously that implied struggle for relevance, for power, and how much power can we get, what kind of benefits. It was time to distribute the perquisites of victory. So there was that great thing. It's inevitable in any organization, in any party, anywhere. So that we managed relatively successfully. And you see, when a group comes like that, it takes time for the different power blocks that came together to accept their levels of relevance and levels of power within the party. So we had all those issues, but it did not burst into the public domain as a major crisis. As a person, I did get a lot of brickbats, obviously because I wasn't serving certain interests. That too was also accepted and acknowledged as part of the process of uniting these groups into one strong political party. So all that happened. So I don't remember, and I don't recall this major crisis.
Well, obviously,
the
party split. I mean, factions broke away.
No,
a lot of well, they did.
No, that is now, not during my time, not after victory.
Well, yeah, but even during your time, or in retrospect, looking back at your time, the current leadership of the APC have accused you of condoning all sorts of acts of indiscipline within the APC and of handing over, and this is a direct quote, a dysfunctional party to your successor. What is your reaction?
No, there was no such thing. Well, I think the comparison is there and is before the public, is in the public domain. There was no such. Of course, when you want to, as they say, it doesn't matter what you use to kill your enemy, so long as your enemy dies. So that was certainly not the position. And as at the time I left my seat as chairman, there was absolutely, completely, totally no significant group that was threatening to leave the party. We had issues. There's no question of that. We had the issues of the National Assembly. So that it is a strange.
So is it a bit like the APC blaming all the problems of Nigeria on the PDP because your successor is now blaming all the problems of the party on you? I mean, is that the sort of thing that...
That's what we said about the PDP is true. They were in power for 16 years, 18 years, 16 years. And we took over a totally damaged economy, totally damaged nation, totally divided polity. That is a different matter.
Well, obviously people would dispute that.
What others say about us is still politics, naturally. They won't be singing our praises.
Well, people would
must have things to say.
The point is that people dispute the point you make about the PDP, because, I mean, at the time the PDP were in power... let me just make the point. At the time they were in power, the economy of this country was growing at almost 6%. And they had a plan, they had a program that was welcomed by all over the world, by the IMF. They had a woman who was in charge of the Nigerian economy, who was internationally respected.
Sorry to interrupt you. Are you sure you were living in this country?
I was. I covered the election.
Because when the APC came into being, I can tell you that it was with the blessing, tacit, of the international community and the role of these agencies that you are talking about. And I can tell you one thing that has stuck in my memory. When we were holding our presidential primaries, the entire, virtually the entire globe was watching the process of those primaries. Why? Question. The PDP has not done right by this nation. The APC has come on stage. Are they in a position to govern? Do they respect due process? Do they do this? Are they Democrat? And the rest of it. And the celebration worldwide, let me call it that, because I got the feedback later. I will give you one example. We were running a live commentary on the primaries. We ran out of money and we were switched off. I got calls from outside this country asking what was going on. And people volunteered to raise money to pay for a continuation of the program. And eventually it was restored. That was the kind of interest that there was.
Yeah, but as I said,
so the description of this wonderful PDP.
As I said, what we are doing now is looking back in retrospect. At the time,
hindsight is 10 over 10.
The point is that at the time that you took over, there were what people are doing now is comparing what you've done, your ability to take charge of this country, the economy, and all the things you promised you were going to do, and comparing it to the period. Of course, in 2015, people were frustrated. The PDP had been in power, as you correctly pointed out, for 16 years. There was a huge, massive outcry about corruption. But many years later, 4 years later, people believe that you have not handled those issues of corruption, that you have not fixed the economy, that there are so many problems that you have not dealt with, and part of that is directly attributable to the fact that the primary person in your arsenal, President Buhari, simply does not have any sense of urgency, that he does not take charge. I mean, it took him 6 months in a country that was on the threshold of a recession, 6 months to lay out his policies about how he was going to deal with the election, the economy of this country, and that's what pushed people into this country into recession.
Profitable discussion, we must stop applying the benefit of hindsight. Benefit of hindsight,
but that's what you did.
Is 100%.
That's what the APC does every single time they're blamed for not running the country properly. They blame it on the PDB.
We must take the reasons why things are what they are. What is important is that these issues are being systematically tackled. Yes, like any other country. We came, we were inherited Boko Haram. We said we would deal with Boko Haram. We dealt with it, but there were bulges in other directions and other places. So yes, there's that impression, that atmosphere. But what is important is that we have restored the economic base. The president is very well aware of some of the things you are talking about. You remember when he was elected second time, he says, well, you people called me Baba Goslow. You are now going to see. So
yeah, but it took him
to the next level.
It took him 6 months after he was re-elected to come up with his
What is important is that we now have a government fully in place. Call me back in 12 months. Let's repeat this interview, and you will see what the results have been.
I like the fact that you're so calm in the face of an obvious storm that many Nigerians find themselves in as a result of what they attribute to the lack of action from the government that you put in power.
It's not a matter of calmness. It's an acceptance that, yes, we have issues in the nation, followed by a realization that these issues are in the process of being targeted, of being tackled, followed by a conviction that, yes, at the end of the day, we are going to have a relatively happy and contented nation.
Okay, I'm going to ask you once again to bear with us as we take another break. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the former national chairman of the ruling party in Nigeria, the APC chief, John Odigie Oyegun, who was, of course, also a former governor of Edo State. He's marking his 80th birthday. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Odigie. In spite of all the praise for Nigeria's democratic achievement at the 2015 election, President Buhari's so-called impeccable anti-corruption credentials and his apparent concern for the poor, 4 years after he inspired enough confidence in Nigerians to vote the PDP out of office, many would say that the president is yet to pin his colors firmly to the mast. So far, the defining characteristics of Mr. Buhari's presidency have been the breadth of his professed ambition to permanently rein in terrorism and his spoken determination to tackle corruption and poverty. But in practical terms, Nigerians and the world are still watching President Buhari closely, trying to see whether his presidential temperament, governing style, and political philosophy match his campaign promises, or whether Nigerians are yet again looking at another lost opportunity. Well, let's talk some more with the man who helped President Buhari to power in 2015, the former national chairman of the ruling APC party, Chief John Odigie Oyegun. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. And I'm going to talk about what it's like to, what you've learned all these years, having turned 80. But just before we do that, following up on that intro, I'm trying to understand what kind of political position that you see the APC in today. I mean, there have been things that have happened between yourself and your successor, Adams Oshimole. There is the crisis taking place in your state, Edo State. What is your sense of that crisis and what position it has put you in? Do you side, for instance, with Governor Obaseki and appear to be sort of, placating him, or do you side with Adams Oshimole, or is your message very nuanced and delicate?
Well, my message is clear that we cannot afford this crisis in Edo State or even in the party nationally. My message is that we must try to achieve a leadership that is by compromise and by agreement, and that is inclusive. My message is that we must let the constitution, both of the party and of the nation, be our guide. And my message is that in whatever we do, we should be principled. If you go by those rules, you cannot go wrong. So in Edo State, please apply that message. Go by the rules, go by the constitution, and everything will thereafter be all right.
But what is your take on the crisis that is taking place there? This sort of stuff going on in the House of Assembly and all that.
I have thought of it intensely. The truth of the matter is that I don't think any of the protagonists will tell you the real issues. The way it has manifested is that there's that seeming interference in the processes of governance in the state. And so that is the same thing now that we are addressing, rather than the root cause of the ailment. And we say, look, go by the rules, go by the constitution, let the governor be, go by what went before your time. And what happened in your time when you were in a similar position as the present governor of Edo State. Once you go by those rules, you cannot go wrong.
Well, what about between yourself and Adams Oshimole? Have there been things that have happened that have drawn quite a lot of your anger and incurred your wrath?
Yes, on one occasion, it's something that is gone now for me.
So you're all
when
chums.
Something happens,
you're all chums again.
Not necessarily, but when something happens, I say my piece, and it's over and done with. I don't dwell on it. I don't go back to it. I left that position more than 12 months ago. And I'm surprised to hear that 12 months later, when they are being accused of whatever misgovernance of the party, that somebody can refer to the fact that I left landmines within the party and was determined that my successor would not succeed, that the party would collapse. In fact, those were in writing. And I said, no, that has crossed the line. For 12 months, I have said nothing. For 12 months, I have not commented in any way on whether things were going right or wrong. I went and maintained my peace. And to come so many months later and blame me for the failings of the successor administration of the party, I thought that was totally crossing the red line.
And I mean, what impact do you think all that is having on your legacy, which to a large extent was very highly prized and respected? Because, I mean, it's reported, for example, that your 80th birthday celebration was attended mostly by members of the opposition party, the PDP, rather than members of your own party, the APC. Is that true?
No, that is not true. That
Right.
is not true. But it's true and not true. It is true in one particular, and that is that I wanted to make a point. And so I invited people across
Right.
the party divide, because we are not enemies. We all want to govern Nigeria. What is the purpose? We want to provide a better life for the people of our nation. We may have different methods of getting there. That does not make us mortal enemies, such that when the time for electioneering comes, like in the last one, we had to sacrifice 200 plus
Yes.
lives. That is absolutely not. So I thought that was an opportunity to make that point. And I was very, very glad, very pleased that the national chairman of the PDP, the state chairman, and the party leaders in the state, when the state government honored me, were all there. It was a wonderful opportunity to make that point. So there's nothing like it was more
Right.
the PDP that attended. No, nothing like that. It was deliberate.
Okay,
The invitations were deliberate.
we're getting to the tail end of the interview. Give us a glimpse into your life over these 80 years, with all the changes that come with turning 80. Have you had a lot of changes in perspective as far as Nigeria is concerned?
Changes of perspective, maybe a tinge of unhappiness. It's been a beautiful life, absolutely beautiful. Right place, right time, virtually succeeded in virtually everything I set my mind on. God has been kind to me, health-wise, and children, and the rest of it. So I'm a totally contented, totally fulfilled person at 80. But I joined the public service in the years of euphoria after independence. Oil had just come on stream in Nigeria. Nations like ours, Brazil, Taiwan, Malaysia, the Koreas and all that, were at that level, you know. But resource-wise, we were touted by even the World Bank as a nation of great potential. My sadness is that today we are still a nation of great potential. And I hope as one moves on in this twilight zone, that we will finally be on the route to true greatness.
We've got less than a minute before the program ends. Senator Shehu Sani, who used to be a member of your APC party, believes that the party is fizzing with so much resentment and lack of a clear ideological direction that it'll implode before the next election in 2023. The APC is your baby. What is your reaction?
When the APC was formed, all the predictions were that it will implode in another year or two. The APC did not implode. Yes, all anybody can say now, and I think that is what he has in mind, just as the problem is he has this flowery language, and he has a way of padding things up to make them look more serious than they actually are. The APC will have issues in 2023, and it has to start now. It has time to put its act together for 2023.
Chief,
2023, there will be no President Buhari.
Chief John Odigie Oyegun, former national chairman of the ruling APC party, thank you very much.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you.
That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again for a fresh edition tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching. Thank you, sir.